Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewport of the horizon, watching Station Terminus grow larger as they approached. The massive trading hub floated in the darkness of space, like a small city made of metal and lights. It was supposed to be a routine stop. Fuel up, grab supplies, maybe enjoy a decent meal that did not come from a food processor. Simple and easy, but something was wrong. Jake could see it immediately. Ships were leaving the station in a hurry, dozens of them streaming away like insects fleeing a fire. The docking bays should have been busy and crowded, but instead, they looked almost empty. His communication officer, a young woman named Lisa Hayes, turned to him with confusion on her face. "Captain, I'm getting distress signals from the station. Not emergency signals. Just general evacuation warnings. But there's no fire, no hull breach, nothing that would explain this." Jake frowned. In his 10 years of space travel, he had seen plenty of strange things, but a mass evacuation from one of the safest stations in this sector made no sense. He opened a channel to the station's command center. "Station Terminus. This is the human vessel Horizon requesting permission to dock. What's going on over there?" There was a long pause before someone answered. The voice sounded nervous, almost panicked. "Horizon. You should turn back. We have a situation. It's not safe here." "What kind of situation?" "We need supplies." Another pause. "There's something in our detention center. Something dangerous. The whole station is being evacuated as a precaution." Jake exchanged glances with his first officer, Kate Sullivan. She was a tough woman, with red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she looked just as confused as he felt. "What could be so dangerous that an entire station needs to evacuate?" Kate asked quietly. Jake was wondering the same thing. "Station Terminus. We're coming in anyway. Horizon out." He guided the ship into one of the empty docking bays. The station's interior was chaos. Aliens of every species rushed past carrying bags and containers. Some were running. Jake saw a Telkari family huddled together, the parents holding their children close. Fear filled the air like smoke. Jake, Kate, and their medical officer Ben Carter made their way through the crowds toward the command center. Ben was young and fresh out of the academy, still excited about every new discovery. He kept looking around with wide eyes, trying to understand what was happening. The station commander was a Valorian named Tresh, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. He looked exhausted and scared. When he saw Jake, he shook his head. "You should not be here, human. You need to leave before the council enforcer arrives." "What's in your detention center?" Jake asked directly. Tresh's face showed pure terror. "A creche. We found her drifting in an escape pod 3 days ago. When we scanned her biology and checked the databases, we realized what she was. The last creche. The last monster." Jake had heard of the creche in history files. An ancient species that had been destroyed by the Galactic Council 300 years ago. The records called them dangerous, brutal, unstoppable. Every species in the galaxy feared them. "I want to see her," Jake said. "Are you insane?" Tresh backed away. "Just being near a creche is dangerous. They're killers, destroyers. Her people nearly wiped out half the galaxy before we stopped them. Then why hasn't she killed anyone yet?" "You've had her for 3 days. Tresh opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer for that. Jake pushed past the commander and headed for the detention center. Kate and Ben followed him, though Ben looked nervous. The hallways were empty now. Everyone had fled to the far side of the station or evacuated completely. The detention center was a small room with reinforced walls and energy barriers. Inside, sitting on a metal bench, was the being everyone feared. She was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, even sitting down. Her skin was black as deep space, seeming to absorb the light around her. She had 4 arms, each ending in long fingers tipped with claws that could easily tear through metal. Her eyes glowed with a soft red light, like distant stars. But what struck Jake most was not her appearance. It was the look on her face. She was not snarling or threatening. She just sat there, looking at the walls with an expression of deep sadness. She looked alone, completely and utterly alone. Her name is Vara, Tresh said quietly from behind Jake. That's what she told us. She hasn't threatened anyone. Hasn't even moved much. But it doesn't matter. The council has sent Commander Zekthar to execute her. He'll be here in a few hours. Execute her for what? What crime has she committed? Being Kresh is crime enough. The council declared her entire species too dangerous to exist. If even one survives, they consider it a threat to galactic peace. Jake watched Vera through the barrier. She had noticed them now. Her glowing eyes fixed on him, studying him. There was intelligence there. And something else. Hope? Maybe? Or just curiosity at seeing someone who did not immediately run away. How long has she been alone? Jake asked. Based on her age and our records, probably over 200 years. She was young when her species was destroyed. She's been hiding ever since. 200 years alone. 200 years of being hunted. 200 years of knowing that every living being in the universe wanted her dead just for existing. Jake felt something shift inside him. This was not right. Whatever her species had done in the past, she had not done it. She was just trying to survive. I'm invoking human diplomatic protection, Jake said firmly. Tresh stared at him in shock. You cannot be serious. I'm completely serious. Under the Human Galactic Treaty, we have the right to claim refugees who face execution without trial. I'm claiming her as a refugee, under human protection. The Council will never allow it. The treaty is clear. They have to allow it, at least until a proper hearing can be arranged. And that gives me time to get her away from here. Kate touched his arm. Jake, are you sure about this? We don't know anything about her or her species. What if the Council is right? Jake looked at Vara again. She was standing now, moving closer to the barrier. She did not look threatening. She looked like someone who had been drowning for 2 centuries and had just seen a piece of driftwood. Look at her, Kate. Really look at her. Does she look like a monster to you? Kate studied Vara carefully, then slowly shook her head. She looks sad. Yeah. She does. Jake turned to Tresh. Lower the barrier. I'm taking her aboard the Horizon. This is madness, Tresh protested, but he entered the code anyway. The barrier flickered and died. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Vara stepped forward slowly, carefully, like she was afraid of scaring them. She stopped a few feet away from Jake and spoke. Her voice was deep and rough from lack of use, but clear. You would stand with me? You do not fear? Jake met her glowing eyes. I'm terrified. But fear is not a good reason to let someone die. For the first time in what might have been centuries, Vara smiled. The Horizon left station terminus with only 4 people aboard. The rest of Jake's crew had requested immediate transfers, too afraid to serve on a ship carrying a Kresh. Jake could not blame them. Everything they had ever learned told them that Vara was dangerous. But he had made his choice. Vara stood in the cargo bay that Jake had converted into temporary quarters for her. The space was large enough for her height, and she had a window looking out at the stars. She spent hours there, just watching the darkness outside. Kate found Jake in the galley, drinking coffee and looking tired. She sat down across from him with her own cup. Half the crew is gone. We barely have enough people to run the ship properly. Ben is terrified, though he is trying hard not to show it. And we have the most wanted being in the galaxy sleeping 2 decks below us. She took a sip of coffee. Please tell me you have a plan. I'm taking her to the Human Colonial Authority. They can give her a proper hearing, at least. Figure out if she is really a threat or just a survivor. And if the Council decides to attack us before we get there? Jake had thought about that. The Galactic Council had enormous military power. If they decided the Horizon was harboring a dangerous criminal, they could destroy the ship easily. Then I guess we better fly fast. Kate laughed, though there was no humor in it. You know what I think? I think you saw someone who needed help, and you just could not walk away. That is very human of you, Jake. Very stupid, but very human. Probably, Jake admitted. The door opened, and Vera entered. She had to duck to fit through the doorway. Kate tensed immediately. her hand moving toward the weapon at her belt. Vera noticed and stopped moving. "I am sorry. I did not mean to frighten you. I heard voices and thought perhaps I could join you. I have not had conversation in a very long time." Her voice was careful, like she was afraid of using the wrong words. Jake gestured to an empty chair. It was too small for her, but she sat anyway, folding her forearms in her lap. "You want coffee?" Jake offered. Vara looked at the cup with curiosity. "I have never tried human beverages." Ben appeared in the doorway, carrying his medical scanner. He had been trying to study Vara's biology without getting too close. Now he stood frozen, seeing her sitting at the table like a normal crew member. "Ben, come in," Jake called. "Vara, this is Ben Carter, our medical officer." Ben moved forward slowly and sat down, keeping the table between himself and Vara. His hands shook slightly as he held his scanner. "Your biology is fascinating," Ben said quietly. "I have never seen anything like it. Your bone density is 3 times human normal. Your muscle structure suggests you could probably lift a small vehicle. And your brain activity is off the charts." Vara looked at him with those glowing red eyes. "My people were built for war. We had to be strong to fight what we fought." "What did you fight?" Kate asked. Her hand was still near her weapon, but she sounded genuinely curious. Vara was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with old pain. "We fought the void entities, creatures from dark space that fed on thought itself. They could consume minds, turn entire populations into empty shells. My people discovered them 400 years ago, and we spent a century trying to stop them." Jake leaned forward. "I have never heard of void entities. They are not in any of our databases. The Council erased the records. After they destroyed my people, they wanted to forget what we had protected them from. It was easier to call us monsters than to remember that we saved them." Kate's expression shifted from fear to confusion. "You are saying your species were not conquerors? You were defenders?" "We were both." Vara's 4 hands clenched together. "The void entities were everywhere. They hid in dark space, in the gaps between stars. When they attacked a world, we had only one choice: seal the world away before the infection spread. Sometimes that meant destroying planets. Sometimes that meant killing millions to save billions." "That is horrible," Ben whispered. "Yes, it was, but it was necessary. The void entities did not kill quickly. They hollowed people out, used their bodies as hosts, spread to everyone they touched. If we did not act fast and hard, entire sectors would fall." Vara stood and walked to the window, looking out at space. "We became very good at fighting them. Very efficient. But we forgot how to be gentle. We forgot how to explain. We just showed up, did what needed to be done, and left. The younger species saw only the destruction. They saw us burn worlds and lock away stars. They feared us more than the enemy they could not see." Jake tried to imagine it. An entire species, fighting a war that no one else understood. Making terrible choices to save people who hated them for it. What happened to the void entities? We sealed them away. Created dimensional prisons in deep space. Locked them outside normal reality. It took everything we had, and when it was done, when the galaxy was finally safe, the Council turned on us. Vara's voice was flat, empty. They called us monsters. Said we were the real threat. They hunted us across every system. Burned our worlds, killed our children. I watched my home burn from an escape pod. I was 50 years old. Still a child by my people's measure. The galley was completely silent. Even Kate had stopped reaching for her weapon. She just stared at Vara with wide eyes. "How long have you been alone?" Jake asked softly. 237 years. I have hidden in dead systems, abandoned stations. Anywhere the Council would not look. I learned to avoid everyone. It was safer that way." Ben's voice cracked when he spoke. "That is terrible. I cannot imagine being alone for so long." Vara turned back to them. "You get used to it. You forget how to talk. You forget what it feels like to have someone look at you without fear. You forget that you are more than just a thing to be destroyed. She looked directly at Jake. Until someone reminds you. Over the following days, something changed aboard the Horizon. Kate started joining Vara in the cargo bay, asking questions about the void entities and the old war. Ben ran medical scans and learned that Vara's biology was not designed for destroying but for protecting. Her claws could cut, yes, but they could also manipulate tools with incredible precision. Her strength was meant for building and carrying, not just fighting. Vara taught them about her people. The Kresh had been artists once, philosophers, builders of beautiful cities. They had loved music and stories. They had families and friends and dreams. The war had changed them, hardened them, but underneath they had still been people. One evening, Jake found Vara in the cargo bay teaching Kate how to read Kresh star charts. The maps showed locations scattered across the galaxy, each marked with a symbol. "What are these?" Jake asked. Vara's expression grew serious. "The dimensional prisons. 43 locations where we sealed the void entities away from reality. They require maintenance every few decades to keep the seals strong, but there has been no one to maintain them since my people died. How long can the seals last without maintenance? 300 years, perhaps? Maybe less?" Kate looked up sharply. "Your people were destroyed 300 years ago." "Yes." The implications hit Jake like a cold wave. "The seals are failing." Vara nodded slowly. "I have been trying to maintain them myself, but I am only one person. I can reach perhaps 1 or 2 every few years. It is not enough. I have detected energy fluctuations near several prisons. The seals are weakening." Ben had joined them now, listening with growing horror. If the void entities escape, what happens? They feed. They spread. Within a year, they could consume this entire sector. Within 10 years, perhaps the whole galaxy. Vara looked at the star charts. "I have been trying to warn people for decades, but no one will listen to a monster." Jake studied the maps, his mind racing. One of the markers was near human space, close to a mining colony called Luna 7. The symbol next to it was pulsing red. "This one. What does the red mean?" Vara's eyes fixed on the location. "It means the seal is critical. Days away from failure, maybe hours. I was trying to reach it when my ship failed, and I had to use the escape pod." Jake made his decision instantly. "Then we go there. Now." If the Horizon dropped out of hyperspace near Luna 7, and immediately every alarm on the ship started screaming. Kate stared at her console in disbelief. The colony is still there. Buildings intact. No signs of damage. But I am reading 0 communication signals. Nothing. It is like everyone just stopped talking at the same time. Jake opened a channel to the colony. "Luna 7. This is the human vessel, Horizon. Please respond." Static filled the bridge for several seconds. Then a voice came through. Soft and strange. It sounded like 100 people speaking at once, perfectly synchronized. "Horizon. We are well. We are perfect. We have awakened to the beautiful darkness. Come join us. Come see what we have become." Ben's face went pale. "That is not right. That is not how people talk." Vara appeared on the bridge, moving fast despite her size. She listened to the transmission, and her expression turned to horror. "We are too late. The seal has broken. A void entity has escaped." Jake had been afraid of that. "How bad is it?" "The colony has perhaps 500 people. If the entity has had even a few hours, most of them will already be consumed. Their minds are gone, replaced by the entity's presence. They are shells now, puppets." Kate pulled up scans of the colony surface. "I am reading life signs. Human life signs. About 400 people, all gathered in the central plaza. They are just standing there. They are waiting," Vara said quietly. "The entity is young, newly freed. It will be gathering strength from the minds it has consumed. Soon it will spread beyond the colony. Every ship that comes to investigate will carry the infection to other worlds." "Can we stop it?" Jake asked. Vara hesitated. I can fight it. The Kresh knew how to battle these creatures. But I am only one, and it has already fed on 400 minds. It will be strong. Then we will help you. You cannot. If you get too close, it will consume you too. Humans have no defense against a void entity. Jake stood up. Then teach us. You said your people fought these things for a century. There must be something we can do. There is monogly Jake's dead. These 4 Dal. There must be something we can do. There must be something we can do. Vara looked at him with those glowing red eyes. For a moment she seemed uncertain, like she was not used to having help. Then, she nodded slowly. There is one way. The entity feeds on thought. On consciousness. It consumes minds that are isolated. Afraid. Alone. But if minds are connected, linked together in genuine bond, it cannot feed. The connection confuses it, burns it. How do we create that kind of connection? Ben asked. It is difficult. It requires trust. Complete trust. I would need to link my mind with yours. Combine our thoughts into one weapon. Vara's 4 hands clenched together. But for that to work, you would need to open your minds to me completely. Let me inside your thoughts. After everything you have been taught about my kind, after all your fear, you would need to trust me with your very consciousness. The bridge was silent. Kate looked at Jake, then at Ben, then back to Vara. The fear was there in her eyes, old and deep. Everything she knew told her that trusting a Kresh was suicide, but she had spent days talking with Vara, learning about her people, hearing her story, watching her sadness, and she had made a choice. I will do it, Kate said firmly. Ben swallowed hard and nodded. Me too, Jake smiled. Then we all go together. Vara, get us ready. They landed the horizon at the edge of the colony. The central plaza was visible from the landing site. And what they saw made their blood run cold. 400 people stood in perfect rows, absolutely still. Their eyes were empty, faces blank. They looked like statues made of flesh. In the center of the plaza floated something that hurt to look at. It was darkness given form, a tear in reality itself. Tendrils of pure void reached out from it, touching the minds of the consumed people, feeding on what little remained of their consciousness. Vara led the team forward slowly. She carried no weapons. Her 4 hands moved in complex patterns, creating barriers that the others could not see but could feel. The air around them felt thick, resistant. Stay close to me, Vara said. My barriers will protect you, but only if you remain within a few feet. They walked through the rows of empty people. Ben tried not to look at their faces. Some of them were young, barely adults. Children stood among them, their small faces blank and empty. He felt sick. The entity noticed them. The darkness shifted, focused. A voice filled their heads, not heard but felt. It was cold and hungry and vast. More minds, more food. Come closer. Let me show you perfection. Let me show you peace. Jake felt the pull of that voice. It promised an end to fear, to pain, to loneliness. Just surrender. Just let go. And everything would be simple. Easy. Perfect. Vara's hand grabbed his shoulder, steadying him. Do not listen. It lies. There is no peace in emptiness, only death. The entity sent its tendrils toward them, black ropes of void that reached through the air. Vara's barriers held them back. But Jake could see the strain on her face. She was strong, but the entity had fed well. It was nearly as strong as she was. Now, Vara said, give me your trust. Open your minds. Jake did not hesitate. He thought of Vara, of her sadness and strength and 200 years alone. He thought of Kate and Ben, his friends and crew. He thought of all the people they were trying to save, and he opened his mind completely. He felt Vara enter his thoughts like warm light. There was no invasion, no force, Just a gentle presence that felt like coming home. Then he felt Kate join them, her fierce determination flowing through the link. Ben added his compassion and hope. 4 minds became one. Through Vara's senses, Jake could suddenly see the entity clearly. It was a wound in space, a thing that should not exist. But it was also afraid. Young and newly awakened and terrified of being sealed away again. They reached out together. Minds unified. But they did not attack. Vara showed them a different way. Something the old Kresh had forgotten in their war. They offered the entity understanding. They showed it that existence did not have to mean consuming others. That connection could be more than feeding. The entity recoiled, confused. It had never encountered this before. Minds that touched without consuming. Thoughts that shared without taking. It reached toward them. Not to feed, but to understand. And that was when Vara struck. Her 4 arms moved in patterns that seemed to cut through reality itself. The dimensional barriers that the old Kresh had created responded to her call. Through the linked minds, Jake felt her pour everything she had into resealing the prison. Her strength, her life force, her very essence. The entity fought back, tendrils lashing out. One struck through Vara's barrier and touched Ben's mind. Jake felt him scream silently, felt the entity begin to feed. Without thinking, Jake pushed his own consciousness forward, shielding Ben, taking the pain himself. The entity's touch was agony. It felt like drowning in ice, like falling into nothing. Jake felt his thoughts begin to scatter, his sense of self starting to dissolve. Then Kate was there, adding her strength to his. And Vara was there, protecting them both while still maintaining the seal. And Ben, recovering, pushing back with fierce determination. Together, combined, they were stronger than the entity. Vara's seal closed around it like a fist, dragging it back toward the dimensional prison. The entity fought, screamed silently across dimensions. But it could not break free from 4 minds acting as one. With a final push, Vara forced it back into the prison and sealed it away. The darkness vanished. The tear in reality closed, and 400 people collapsed to the ground like puppets with cut strings. The mind link broke. Jake fell to his knees, gasping. Kate caught herself against a wall. Ben sat down hard, shaking. Vara stood for a moment longer, then slowly sank to the ground. Her skin had lost some of its darkness. She looked diminished, weaker. "Is it done?" Jake managed to ask. "It is sealed," Vara said softly. "But the seal required part of my life force to anchor it. I am permanently weakened. If we face another entity, I will not be as strong." Medical teams arrived from the horizon. They moved among the fallen colonists, checking for survivors. Most were alive, but their minds were damaged. Some might recover with time and treatment. Others would never be the same. But they had stopped the entity from spreading. 400 lives damaged was better than millions dead. Jake sat beside Vara, too exhausted to move. "You saved them. You saved all of us." "We saved them," Vara corrected gently. "I could not have done it alone. Your species has something mine lost long ago. You know how to trust, how to connect." That made all the difference. News of what happened at Luna 7 spread across the galaxy within hours. But the response was not what Jake had hoped for. Instead of gratitude, instead of understanding, the fear only grew stronger. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. They declared that Vara's existence attracted the void entities, that she was a danger simply by living. They demanded her immediate execution. A fleet began assembling, not to help, not to thank them, but to destroy the last Kresh once and for all. Jake looked at Vara, at Kate, at Ben. They were exhausted and hurt and scared. But they had faced the darkness together and won. The orbital court above the planet Concordia was designed to be neutral ground. Here, disputes between species were settled according to galactic law. The building floated in space, a perfect sphere of white metal and transparent walls that looked out at the stars. Jake had never imagined he would be standing here, defending someone the entire galaxy wanted dead. The courtroom was massive, with seats for representatives from every member species of the Galactic Council. They were all filled. Everyone wanted to witness the trial of the last Kresh. The air was thick with tension and fear. Vara stood in the center of the room in a containment field. The energy barrier hummed around her, strong enough to stop a warship's weapons. They were taking no chances. Even weakened from sealing the void entity, she was still considered the most dangerous being in the galaxy. Jake stood beside her as her advocate. Kate and Ben sat in the witness section. The Human Colonial Authority had sent observers, but offered no official support. They were scared of angering the council. The prosecutor was a Telkari named Ralesh, an older being with pale skin and eyes that held deep hatred. His homeworld had been one of those quarantined by the Kresh during the ancient war. He had lost family in the destruction. Ralesh began his case with images. Burned worlds. Destroyed cities. Records of Kresh ships turning entire planets into lifeless rocks. Each image was worse than the last. The courtroom watched in horror. "This is what the Kresh were," Ralesh said, his voice cold. "Destroyers without mercy. Killers without conscience. They claimed to protect us, but they murdered billions. My grandmother died when the Kresh glassed Telkar Prime. She was a teacher. She had never harmed anyone. But the Kresh did not care. They burned the whole world and called it necessary." Vara stood silent in her containment field. She did not try to defend herself. Jake could see the pain in her eyes as she watched the images. These were her people's crimes, and she carried the weight of them. "The Galactic Council destroyed the Kresh to save ourselves," Ralesh continued. "We ended the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. And now, this human wants us to spare the last of them. He claims she is different, that she is not like her ancestors. But how can we take that risk? How can we let even one Kresh live, knowing what they did?" The council members murmured agreement. Fear filled the room like a living thing. It was Jake's turn to speak. He walked to the center of the courtroom, feeling the eyes of hundreds of beings on him. His mouth was dry, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Everything Prosecutor Ralesh showed you is true. The Kresh did terrible things. They destroyed worlds. They killed billions. I am not here to deny that or excuse it." Jake looked around the room. "But I want you to see something else." He activated his own display. Star charts appeared, showing the locations of the dimensional prisons. Then he showed data from Luna 7, medical scans of the consumed colonists, sensor readings of the void entity. The Kresh were not conquerors. They were fighting something we had forgotten about. The void entities. Creatures that feed on consciousness itself. Every world the Kresh destroyed was already infected, already lost. They had a choice. Let the infection spread and lose everything, or act fast and brutal and save what they could. Ralesh stood up angrily. "This is a lie. There are no records of these void entities. The human is inventing fairy tales to save his monster." Ralesh stood up angrily. Ralesh stood up angrily. "The records were erased," Jake said firmly. "After the council destroyed the Kresh, they deleted all information about what they had been fighting. It was easier to call them monsters than to admit they had killed the people who saved the galaxy." He showed footage from Luna 7. The empty-eyed colonists. The darkness of the entity. The horror of minds, consumed and hollowed out. This is what a void entity does. This is what the Kresh fought for a century. And when they finally sealed all the entities away, when the galaxy was safe, you thanked them by hunting them to extinction. The courtroom was silent now. Some council members looked shocked, others looked skeptical, but they were listening. "Vara is not here to threaten you. She is here because she is still trying to protect you. The dimensional prisons are failing. Without maintenance, they will all break down within a decade. And when they do, the void entities will be free again. Only this time, there will be no Kresh to stop them." Ben stood up from the witness section. "I request permission to testify." The judge, a neutral Valorian, nodded. Ben walked to the center, looking young and nervous but determined. I was at Luna 7, Ben said. I saw what the void entity did to those people. I felt it try to consume my mind. If Vara had not been there, if she had not known how to fight it, we would all be dead, and the entity would have spread to other worlds. He looked directly at the council. She saved us. She weakened herself permanently to seal that entity away. She did not have to. She could have run, hidden like she has been doing for 200 years, but she chose to stay and fight because that is what her people were. Protectors. Ralesh stood again. And who released the entity in the first place? These creatures were sealed away for 300 years with no problems. Then, this creche appears, and suddenly a seal breaks. Perhaps she released it herself to make herself seem necessary. That is a lie, Kate shouted, standing up. The seal broke because of unauthorized mining. Human mining. We drilled into the prison by accident. Vara had nothing to do with it. She presented evidence from the Luna 7 mining company. Deep drilling records showing they had gone far deeper than authorized. Breaking into ancient structures they did not understand. The council members looked uncomfortable now. The idea that humans had accidentally released a void entity was embarrassing. But the evidence was clear. Jake pressed his advantage. Vara is the last person in the galaxy who knows how to maintain these prisons. Kill her, and you doom yourselves. The seals will fail. The entities will escape, and this time, there will be no one to stop them. The judge called for deliberation. The council members left to discuss in private. Jake, Kate, and Ben sat together, waiting. Hours passed. Vara remained in her containment field, perfectly still. Finally, the council returned. The judge spoke. We have reached a decision. The evidence suggests that the void entities are real and that the dimensional prisons require maintenance. However, we cannot ignore the crimes of the creche species. Therefore, we offer this judgment. Vara will be granted conditional freedom. She will teach others how to maintain the dimensional prisons. She will share all knowledge of the void entities. In return, she will be allowed to live under strict supervision. Jake felt relief wash over him. It was not perfect, but it was better than execution. But the judge was not finished. However, Vara must understand that she will never be trusted. She will be monitored constantly. No species will work with her willingly. She exists only because we need her knowledge. Once that knowledge is transferred, her continued existence will be re-evaluated. Vara spoke for the first time during the trial. Her voice was quiet but clear. I understand. I have always understood. You fear me too much to see me. That will not change. The containment field dropped. Guards surrounded her immediately, weapons ready. They escorted her to a holding area where she would wait while the council made arrangements. Jake tried to follow, but the guards blocked him. Only authorized personnel. He watched helplessly as they took Vara away. She looked back once, and he saw acceptance in her eyes. She had never expected mercy. Just survival. Kate put a hand on his shoulder. What do we do now? Jake thought about it. The council had given Vara conditional freedom, but she would still be alone. Still monitored and feared and isolated. Nothing had really changed except that now she was a prisoner who could move around. We do not leave her alone, Jake said firmly. The council said no species will work with her willingly. But they did not say we could not. Ben's eyes widened. You want to stay with her? Help her maintain the prisons? Why not? We have already faced a void entity together. We know the truth about her people, and someone needs to make sure those seals stay strong. Kate grinned. You know the Colonial Authority will not like this. You will probably lose your commission. Then I will lose it. I did not become a captain to follow orders blindly. I became one to help people. And right now, Vara needs help more than anyone. They left the courthouse together, already planning. The council had tried to isolate Vara, to use her knowledge, and then dispose of her. But they had forgotten something important. 6 months after the trial, Jake stood on the bridge of a ship that was no longer his. The horizon had been reclaimed by the human colonial authority when he resigned his commission. But that was fine. He had a new ship now. She was called the Guardian's Promise, a mid-sized transport vessel that Kate had helped him buy with their combined savings. It was not fancy or fast, but it was theirs. And more importantly, it was home. Vara sat at the navigation console, her 4 hands moving across the controls with practiced ease. She had learned human systems quickly. She was good at adapting. 200 years of survival had taught her that. The next prison is 3 days away, she said. The seal there is showing early signs of stress. If we can reinforce it now, it should hold for another 50 years. Jake nodded. This was their life now. Traveling from prison to prison. Maintaining the seals that kept the void entities locked away. The work the creche had done for centuries, now being done by a crew of 4. 4 had become their magic number. Kate entered the bridge carrying tools and looking grease-stained. The backup generator is giving me trouble again. I swear this ship falls apart if I look at it wrong. That is because you bought the cheapest vessel in the sector. Ben called from the medical bay. He was cataloging supplies, making sure they had enough for the journey. We bought what we could afford, Jake corrected with a smile. The first months had been hard. After the trial, Vara had been given a small ship and allowed to leave. But no stations would let her dock. No species would work with her. She had been free in name only, still just as isolated as before. Jake had found her drifting near the edge of human space, alone in her ship, trying to reach the dimensional prisons by herself. He had called her on an open channel. You do not have to do this alone anymore. Vara had been silent for a long time before responding. You gave up everything to stand with me at the trial. I will not let you give up more. Too late. I already resigned. Kate and Ben did too. We are all unemployed now. Figured we might as well be unemployed together. And just like that, the Sentinel Initiative had been born. 4 people in one ship, doing work the whole galaxy refused to acknowledge was necessary. The early days had been difficult. They had no funding, no support, no recognition. They maintained the prisons using Vara's knowledge and their own determination. They ate cheap food, slept in cramped quarters, and barely made enough to keep the ship running. But slowly, things began to change. The first to join them was a young human engineer named Danny Cooper. He had heard about their work and showed up at their docking bay with a toolkit and a grin. I hear you are fixing dimensional prisons and stopping universe-ending monsters. That sounds a lot more interesting than my current job. Jake had been surprised. You know what Vara is? You know her species? Yeah. I also know she saved Luna 7. My sister was working there. She is alive because of Vara. Danny had looked at Vara directly without fear. That makes you a hero in my book. Danny became their 5th crew member. Then came Linda Hayes, a human pilot who was tired of safe runs and wanted adventure. Then Paul Chen, a scientist who wanted to study the dimensional prisons. Then others, slowly, carefully, humans who had heard the real story and wanted to help. After a year, they had enough crew for a second ship. Kate took command of that one, named the Shield Bearer. They could cover twice as many prisons now, work twice as fast. And then, something remarkable happened. A Valorian named Kess requested to join them. Kess was young, barely an adult by Valorian standards. She came aboard the Guardian's Promise, nervous and scared, but determined. When Vara entered the room, Kess trembled but stood her ground. I want to help, Kess said in a shaking voice. I know your species. I know what everyone says. But I also know that a void entity killed my mother when I was young. A prison failed, just for a moment, and she was consumed. If you are trying to prevent that from happening to others, then I want to help. Vara had looked at the young Valorian for a long time. Then, slowly, she had extended one of her 4 hands. You are welcome here. Kess joining them changed everything. She was the first non-human to work with Vara willingly. News spread. Some condemned her, but others, a small number at first, began to question what they had been taught. An elderly Telkari historian named Nell arrived 6 months later. She was old and walked with a cane, but her mind was sharp. "I have spent my life studying the ancient records," Nell said, "the ones the council tried to erase. I know what the Kresh really did. I know what they saved us from. I am old now, near the end of my life. But I want to spend my remaining time making sure people remember the truth." Nell became their record keeper, documenting everything they did, preserving the real history of the Kresh and the Void entities. She published reports that most ignored, but some read. Slowly, very slowly, the truth began to spread. 2 years after the trial, the Sentinel Initiative had 40 crew members across 3 ships. It was not many compared to the galaxy's billions, but it was more than Jake had ever dreamed possible. He found Vara one evening in the observation deck, watching the stars through the large window. She seemed different now. Less tense. Less alone. "You look happy," Jake said, sitting beside her. Vara's glowing eyes turned to him. "I am remembering what that feels like. I had forgotten." Nell published another report today, about the battle at Luna 7. "It is getting more attention this time. People are starting to listen. Some people, not enough. It is a start." Jake looked out at the stars. "When I first saw you in that detention cell, you looked like you had given up, like you were just waiting for the end. I had given up. I had been alone for so long that I had forgotten why I kept fighting." Vara's 4 hands folded together. "Do you know what the worst part was? Not the fear everyone felt, not even the hatred. It was the loneliness. Knowing that no one in the entire universe cared if I lived or died. I cared. From the moment I saw you. I know. And that changed everything." Vara looked at him with those alien eyes that no longer seemed frightening at all. "You saw past what I looked like, past what my people had done. You just saw someone who needed help. That is what humans do. At least it is what we are supposed to do." The door opened, and Kate stuck her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but we are approaching the next prison. Vara, we are going to need your expertise." Vara stood smoothly and headed for the bridge. Jake followed, watching her move with confidence through the ship, greeting crew members who no longer flinched when they saw her. Danny was showing her a new tool he had designed. Kess was asking questions about Kresh engineering. Nell was recording everything. The dimensional prison appeared on their screens. A point in space where reality bent in on itself. Only Vara's ancient knowledge made it visible to them. Without her, they would have flown right past it. They deployed the maintenance drones, guided by Vara's instructions. The work was slow and precise. One mistake could weaken the seal instead of strengthening it. But they had done this many times now. They knew what they were doing. As they worked, an alert came through. Another ship was approaching. Jake tensed, wondering if it was Council enforcers coming to check on them. But the identification signal was human. A young captain named Alex Stone appeared on their view screen. "Guardian's promise. I am Captain Stone of the research vessel Discovery. We intercepted your maintenance schedule. That prison is near a trade route we use regularly. I wanted to thank you for keeping it secure." Jake was surprised. Recognition from other humans was still rare. "Just doing our job, Captain. It is more than a job. It is important work." Stone hesitated. "I know the Council does not support you, but I want you to know that a lot of us regular captains do. We see what you are doing out here. We appreciate it." After Stone signed off, Jake saw Vara smiling. It was a rare sight, but becoming less rare every day. "The galaxy still fears you," Jake said quietly. "Most species still call you a monster. I know, and they probably always will." Vara watched the prison seal strengthen on her monitors. "But that is fine. I do not need the whole galaxy to understand, just a few good people who are willing to see the truth." Ben called from the medical bay. "Jake, we are getting a message from a Valorian science team. They want to meet with us. Learn about the prisons. They are offering funding for our work." Kate laughed. Funding? That is new. Maybe we can finally afford food that does not taste like cardboard. The crew celebrated that night. A small party in the galley. 40 people from 6 different species, eating together, laughing together, working together. A year ago, this would have been impossible. Vara would have been alone in a cell somewhere, waiting for execution. Now she was teaching Danny about dimensional physics. Now she was sharing stories of her childhood with Nell. Now she was home. Jake found her later on the bridge. The Guardian's promise was en route to the next prison, traveling through the quiet darkness of space. "You know what I think?" Jake said. "The universe called you a monster because they did not have a word for what you really are." Vara tilted her head curiously. "And what is that?" "A guardian. A protector. Someone who kept fighting even when everyone forgot why it mattered. Even when you were completely alone." Number 4. I am not alone anymore. No, you are not. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Behind them, the crew of the Guardian's Promise went about their work, maintaining prisons, preventing disasters, doing the job that no one else wanted to acknowledge needed doing. The Galactic Council still considered Vara a threat. Most species still feared her. The trial had not changed minds or hearts, but it had given her something more important. It had given her a family. An alert beeped. Another prison was showing signs of stress, this one near the outer rim. Kate was already plotting a course. Ben was preparing medical supplies in case they encountered any void entity activity. The crew was ready. "Let's go save the galaxy again," Jake said with a grin. Vara's eyes glowed brighter, and she smiled that rare, beautiful smile. Together, the Guardian's Promise jumped to light speed, carrying its crew toward another prison. Another seal to maintain. Another quiet victory that would go unrecorded by history, but they did not need history to remember them. They had each other. And in a universe that valued fear over truth, that was everything. The Sentinel Initiative would keep working, keep fighting, keep protecting a galaxy that refused to thank them, because that was what Guardians did. And sometimes, it only took one human's courage to remind the last monster that she had always been a hero. Humans did not abandon their friends, even when those friends were the last of a species the whole galaxy feared. Especially then. Outside the courthouse, news drones swarmed. Reporters from every species shouted questions. Public opinion was divided. Some called Jake a hero for saving Luna 7. Others called him a fool for protecting a monster. Jake ignored them all. He had made his choice at Station Terminus when he first saw Vara sitting alone in that cell. And he would keep making that choice. Every day. For as long as it took. Because sometimes courage was not about fighting. Sometimes it was about standing beside someone when the entire universe had turned away. And Jake Morrison was not going anywhere. "They are coming for us," Kate said quietly, reading the council transmissions. "I know," Jake replied. "But we are not done fighting yet." Vara stood slowly, her weakened body still strong enough to face whatever came next. "Thank you," she said simply, "for standing with me, for seeing past the monster." Jake smiled tiredly. "You were never the monster, Vara. You were always the hero. The galaxy just forgot how to see it." The Horizon lifted off from Luna 7, carrying its crew toward an uncertain future. The Council wanted Vara dead. The whole galaxy called her a monster. But 4 people knew the truth, and sometimes, that was enough to change everything. Kate stared at him. "Jake, we are supposed to be heading to the Colonial Authority. This is more important. If Vara is right, if that seal breaks, thousands of people could die." He turned to Vara. "Can you fix it? I can try. But if I am too late, if the entity has already escaped, it will be very dangerous." Jake smiled grimly. "Then I guess it is a good thing we are all terrified of you. We will need that kind of protection." For the second time since he had met her, Vara smiled. It was small and uncertain, but real. The Horizon changed course, heading toward Luna 7 and the failing prison beyond. None of them knew what they would find there. But for the first time in 200 years, Vara was not facing it alone. And somehow, that made all the difference. "Then I will stand with you, human. Whatever comes." Jake nodded. "My name is Jake Morrison. Welcome aboard the Horizon." As they left the detention center together, Jake knew he had just changed everything. The entire galaxy would call him a fool. But looking at Vara, walking beside him, he knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes courage was not about being unafraid. Sometimes it was about doing what was right even when you were scared to death.